Bengals at Raiders per FanDuel Sportsbook. Cincinnati is a 1-point road favorite in this one. The over-under currently sits at 49.5.
Fascinated by this game on a number of levels. One, from a game theory perspective, this is the pivot 4 p.m. game, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, if your stuff doesn't hit and you know that everyone's sitting on Cowboys and Chiefs, you got to go here.
Yep.
Unless you're going Seattle, Arizona, which has potential to go as well. If we get Kyler, we get news that Kyler's going to play, and you get a little bounce back from guys like DK and Lockett and Russ, knocking the rust off last week potentially as well. But I think this one is going to be the more popular kind of side to kind of maybe have a chance to be more of a shootout.
Sure.
You look at Burrow. He entered the bye coming off of his worst week of the season against the Browns. And what's interesting about that is the Browns finally stopped. The Browns didn't blitz him. They just went with the 4-man pass rush and they got there. We had talked about on this show a bunch of times how Burrow's just been so dominant against the blitz, just so hyper efficient against the blitz that finally some team was just like, maybe we should not blitz him. And that happened. The Browns didn't. I mean, he's now against, when teams don't blitz, Joe Burrow, 7.8 yards per pass attempt, 67% completion rate, 12 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. When teams do blitz him, 71% completion rate, 11.5 yards per pass attempt, 11 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. The Raiders blitz at the lowest rate in the NFL. They don't blitz at all, basically ever.
Sure.
So it's going to be interesting. But then we also have this other pulling conundrum that the Raiders, if you watched the Sunday Night Football and listened to everyone talk to you about cover 3 and how much cover 3 the Raiders are running, Joe Burrow's been phenomenal against cover 3 so far this season. 21% of his pass attempts come against cover 3. He's averaging 9.3 yards per pass attempt, 73% completion rate. So we got two kind of pulling angles here. The Raiders aren't going to blitz, can get home at 4. Burrow wants to invite you to be the blitz, but he's also torched cover 3. So very intriguing kind of a cat and mouse game there and trying to figure out what wins out. Derek Carr, since Henry Ruggs, had this unfortunate events happen to occur off field, his ADOT went from 9.3 yards, which was 6th in the NFL, all the way down to 6.9 yards the past 2 weeks, 24th in the NFL. Teams just aren't going to respect Zay Jones running deep routes. So Deshaun Jackson is going to have to get on the field more than the 7 routes he ran. They're just going to have to get him up to speed and get him on the field, up that ADOT, make teams respect him so they're just not shrinking the field. Because it's hard to live just throwing to Hunter Renfrow and your tight end. It really is. And Hunter Renfrow, I just can never get myself to get there on FanDuel.
Me either. He's popping in optimals, and I still find a way to not play him for some reason. There was 2 weeks in a row where he was just really cheap, and I guess convinced myself there wasn't enough ceiling there. But who else is there at this point outside of Waller, right? So it's just so condensed that he always gets there just on volume. It feels like
season high 27% target rate on Sunday night. He has not had more than 58 yards in a game since week 3. And he hasn't had more than 77 yards in a game on the season.
So maybe my biases are true. That doesn't sound very upside-ish.
Here's the thing. He's gotten some touchdowns. He actually has more touchdowns than Devontae Adams in the cruel twist of fate of 2021 NFL, fantasy football. So, yeah, I mean, and Bengals have struggled against interior receivers this season as well. So, I mean, he does have that going for him as well. Waller, just the 24 yards, a season low Sunday night. He did have a touchdown called back because they cheated on the play. But, you still look at his usage is still there. He still had 21% of the team targets. That was 6th among all tight ends last week. He's had at least 20% of the team targets in each of his past 5 games. The results just haven't hit yet. And maybe they never do, and we chase this the entire season. But, I mean, Bengals, are a team that, have been good against tight ends, but they haven't really faced anybody. They faced Mark Andrews. He had 3 for 48, and they gave up 8 catches and 74 yards to TJ Hawkinson. The rest of the guys they play have just been on the scrap heap of the tight end, dumpster. And we didn't even talk about the Bengals pass catchers. So, we talked about the cover 3. If the Raiders are going to live in cover 3, T. Higgins leads the Bengals in targets, catches, end-to-end air yards against cover 3 so far this season. The interesting thing is if you look at, projected ownership, and it's only Thursday when we're recording the show, T. Higgins he's going to be the Mike Williams of this week.
I was just going to say, you just ruined him. He's officially the Mike Williams. And the week before that, he was the Hollywood Brown, basically, that no one thought was going to be 20%, and he was.
But here's where we go. Even I'm seeing an early projected ownership that Tyler Boyd is coming in to be the second highest owned Bengals wide receiver,
Really?
which moves us to
why does no one want to play
Mr.
Jamar Chase?
Jamar Chase.
Why does no one want to play this guy? I don't understand.
I mean, he finally ran into some variance the past 2 games. I mean, he had 3 for 32 against the Jets and 6 for 49 against the Browns. But look at his targets in those games. 27% of team targets, 32% of the team targets. He's had at least 20% of the team targets in every game but one this season in each of his past 7 games. The Raiders are still giving up points to opposing wide receiver ones, 15.7 points per game. That is 20th in the NFL, and they're 31st in receptions allowed per game to opposing wide receiver ones at 6.7. If you're going to tell me on this slate of slates that Jamar Chase is going to be the 3rd highest owned Bengals wide receiver, I mean, I'm interested in that. That's something you can sell me on.
Yeah, I mean, let me just jump in quickly because obviously I like to run the sims in the background as we're talking through this stuff. So runthesims.com, obviously you can simulate the slate 10,000 times. What's really interesting, we're just talking about how T. Higgins is going to be extremely popular. Who are the first 2 guys that you see from Cincinnati in the optimal lineup, optimal rate being high? Joe Mixon and Jamar Chase. So it's the guys that might not be as heavily owned. So I'd love to see that, honestly. What do you think about Joe Mixon? Because I don't know if he's really going to gain a ton of steam, but the price isn't terrible for him.
Yeah, I really like Joe Mixon this week. He's a bit of a wild card, and FanDuel actually I've underpriced him all year, because he has this thing where, like, if he doesn't catch passes, or Bengals just don't always throw to him is really what I'm trying to get at. He's been on a hot run. He's had 40 or more receiving yards in 3 of his past 4 games, because that's been the ceiling unlocker. Because if you look at his game log early in the season, he was still finding the end zone and having these touches, but he wasn't getting over from a ceiling perspective because he was just not catching passes.
You think that has anything to do with how the Bengals just aren't really throwing in the red zone either? I always pull up these charts that Leone tweets out from Establish the Run, and red zone pass rate above expectation. The Bengals are actually number 1 in the league in that. So maybe it's just they're just throwing in the red zone a little bit more. I don't know.
The other interesting component about that side of the Bengals argument is they don't get to the red zone because they lead the NFL in touchdowns scored outside the red zone. So they actually are in the bottom of the league in red zone plays because they've scored so many long touchdowns this season.
Good problem to have.
But the interesting thing about Mixon, like I said, though, is that even though he's gotten this usage 3 of the past 4 games in the receiving game, his routes run per dropback haven't changed. So they haven't moved at all, even with Chris Evans being banged up. So it's one of these things, like, when do they pull the rug on us again, right? Like, we're finally believing, like, they're using Joe Mixon as this all-field asset. It's finally happening, and they just don't throw it in the next game. Like, because that happened right after the Lions game. He hits, and the next week he has 0 targets.
Right.
And you're like, what? You know, what the hell happened? Like, you just saw he just housed a 40-yard catch. Like, throw it to him once in a while.
Sounds like it should be a good thing to do. I'm with you.
Yeah, but I do like him a lot. I don't know if this lineup will build with him or not, or a next one, but we're going to build a lineup with him. He's going to be definitely in my player pool as well, because I just think he's outright too cheap on FanDuel.
Yeah, I think you're right. And you said it. Let's go ahead and build that lineup. Before we do that, though, I want you guys to pause this video. Let me know in the comments who you would stack with Cincinnati and Las Vegas in DFS this week. We will be putting one of these teams in the Listener League. Reeps will get to decide which one of those teams it is. We already built a team for Dallas and Kansas City. Now we're going to build our Cincinnati stack. Is it going to be the Joe Burrow side of this, though, Reeps, to start?
Yeah, because you know what? I want to lean into, and maybe it doesn't happen when we come to Sunday, but I really like, because Jamar Chase is a guy that's like shown to be a slate breaker, right? And if he's going to come in way under T. Higgins and even Tyler Boyd, I want some of that.
Do we want to put Waller on the other side of this?
Yeah, let's go Burrow, Chase, and Waller on this one.
Okay. So do we want to... I'm hesitant to throw Gaskin in again, because what if one of these other like really strong running back values comes into play later in the week? Obviously, we have some injuries that we're going to have to figure out what happens. But man, the value just overall at this point of the week does not feel great. So I'm down to go whatever direction you want. I'm fine putting Gaskin in it, but maybe we try and find a different route. The guys are expensive though, so it's tough.
We can. I think, just for the sake of, clarity, we put Algiers in again, just because, I mean, he's just at 7K. You're talking about a Packers running back that is going to probably get 80% of the backfield touches. Like, we would love, like, imagine if Aaron Jones, we knew he was just going to weekly get 80% of the backfield touches.
Yeah, like, it's like one of those situations where, like, I get it, he's the backup, but he actually projects better than Aaron Jones would, because Aaron Jones not there. There's just more to go around, and he's already been so active in the passing game, man. Like, AJ Dillon is one of those players that I could see just being in all my teams this week, like every single one.
And the matchup is beautiful. I mean, the Vikings are 31st in EPA against the run. I mean, he should be. I mean, obviously they weren't going to probably jam him like too crazy because of where he was the week prior. But yeah, I mean, this is a dude that's an over 8K running back for sure.
Yeah. I mean, he's going to be chalky, but like there's different things you can do in the morning to differentiate anyway. So I'm totally fine with that.
Like Dearness, and he's not as cheap as Dearness, but like, I mean, there's certain situations like you don't need to really mess around with.
I'm with you. So
what do we have?
We do need value, that's for sure. 62 the rest of the way. I'll put in our cheap placeholder defense like we usually do. Washington is 3,500. So, I mean, we're at 6,900 the rest of the way. It's not as bad as I thought. I guess when you're not playing Chiefs, it's not the worst thing.
Let's see if we can open some more up. Let's throw Emmanuel Sanders in here.
Okay. So my question with Sanders, he seems to be like kind of the forgotten man a little bit there. And if Beasley misses, it does feel like maybe a bull signal towards maybe a little bit more Cole Beasley, maybe a little bit more Dawson Knox. I don't know. Emmanuel Sanders is still getting the deep targets, though. His price never moves because he hasn't really had like that explosion game yet. So I don't hate it. I'm just curious what you think about Sanders.
Yeah, well, the people will have to turn to the next video to find out.
Yes. All right. Another card, Reeves. You're getting it. It's going to be right over here. So anyone that wants to watch that video next, that's the link. Okay. 7,300 the rest of the way. So we have plenty of salary. If we did want to double Burrow, we could. You know me. Like, I'm trying to double this Joe Burrow situation, especially if he's not going to run much. But I'm fine with either one.
That's fine. I mean, do we do T then just because he fits in? Like,
it's your team, Breeps. I'm not going to force you to double it. I'm just saying I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, what's the field size in the listener league?
2,000. So
that's not bad.
Yeah.
So I'm like you, like I've gone to like these sub 200-man tournaments, man.
And I'm playing some that are like sub 100 these days, man.
Yeah.
Like
the
1K on FanDuel is like
games.
Yeah. Yep. The 1K on FanDuel is like 70 people, 60 people, something like that. So very small. Most of the people watching this are probably playing things significantly bigger than that, though. So
yeah, I've really gone away from that this year by far. But I mean, you've been preaching that to everyone for a long time.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah. So we could put T in and have that would be our 3 receivers.
No one's gonna play Jonathan Taylor this week. I'm looking at our mini stacks that we would have available here. We could go Justin Jefferson probably with AJ Dillon at this point if we wanted to mini stack that Green Bay game.
If we put in Jonathan Taylor, what do we have left?
6,600 in the flex. So that's that Gaskin range essentially.
So we still are stuck on Gaston.
It could be actually. It's a little bit better than that.
This week is going.
It's a little bit better than that. We can get in Devonta Smith. We can get in Brandon Cooks. We can still. I mean, we're 100 away from getting to Jalen Waddle, who I think is going to be relatively popular this week. But yeah, we don't have to go the JT route, but he's really priced down for this matchup, I think.
Well, we could plug Zeke in at 85.
Good. Have like one piece of that. I mean, yeah, we guess we got to think through. We do have the 4 p.m. stack, and if we're not going to be playing, I guess the Kansas City side, the Dallas, I guess the Zeke aspect of this lineup would make sense, and then that gets us to 6,900 in the flex, and then a little bit more flexibility. We have Tyler Lockett, Michael Pittman, George Kittle, which we're probably not doing. What do you think about David Montgomery? He's, I guess, spoiler alert, he's on one of the lists for a video that we have coming up. At the running back position. I wasn't really on him, but I'm curious if you think that Montgomery's even in play.
I mean, he's definitely in play because of the workload that he gets. We saw on Monday night before, but I mean, it's not a great spot.
Sure.
You know, I don't like really playing running backs against Baltimore just because the way they defend the position. You know, I told you, all they do is they load the box. They want you to not understand where the blitz is coming from. And they're so active in actual, you know, their run fits that, you know, they don't give up any big plays. They're actually number 1 in the NFL in rate of runs to not gain any yardage against them, even ahead of the Bucs and the Saints.
All right, 6,900. Who do you want to toss in here?
I guess I would have no problem really kind of throwing Lockett in here, to be honest.
I like it. Bounce back spot for Seattle. I guess, spoiler alert, I think they're going to score more than 0 points this week.
They will score 8 points.